Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Marzillo. I'm a partner engineer here at Snowflake. For my part here, we're going to be kind of rolling up our sleeves and getting our hands dirty with walking through the actual lab. So the first thing that you'll have to have, and I think we've already mentioned this, is you have to have this quick start set up already in the browser. So you can go to quickstarts.snowflake.com and search there for Bedrock, Streamlet, and Snowflake, right? And you'll find something that looks like this, or this exact quick start. And you'll also want to have access to a Snowflake account as well as an AWS account in the same VPC or with no networking restrictions, so that you can make sure that two accounts can connect to each other. So with that, let's dive in. So the overview here, and I think you probably already got a pretty good overview of this with the previous presentation. But what we're going to be doing here is using the generative AI services offered from Amazon Bedrock, along with Snowflake and Streamlet. And Streamlet allows you to very quickly build applications using a easy-to-use Python package right within inside of your own Snowflake account. Again, we mentioned this. Make sure that you have a Snowflake and an AWS account stood up. If you don't, that's okay. I would say follow along here, and then maybe kind of come back to this recording that we'll send out, and you can pretty easily piece this lab or quick start together. But high level, this is the architecture we're going to be building, right? And all we're going to be doing, right, is accessing Snowflake data from your Snowflake tables, using a Streamlet app that acts as the linchpin to then, make calls out to Amazon Bedrock and then return results. And I think the star of the show here, right, is this kind of integration point, right, that you can very easily and securely set up a connection from Snowflake to Bedrock, and then also have that connection be secure and be able to scale for your organization. So let's go ahead and actually kind of jump into the use case. So we'll move on to step 2 here. So what we're going to be doing, the way that we set this up, is thinking of a retail use case where you have historical purchase information sitting in a Snowflake database, and you want to use that along with a prompt to try to generate some sort of marketing message, right? And that marketing message is the final output, right? And the idea is think of Spotify or iTunes Wrapped, where it's like, looking back at last year, thank you for being a great customer. Here's what you purchased. And then now we're going to try to cross-sell you or upsell you, right? So based on that information, we're going to kind of recommend some other items for you. So kind of 2 parts there, a little bit of customer wrapped along with upsell, cross-sell. So that's the use case that we're going to be building here. And let's kind of get right into it. And worth mentioning too, as we're working through this is the way that we're working through this here is a pretty quick start by definition. But you'll see here steps 7 through 9 are all optional steps that we're not going to cover here. But are definitely great ways to kind of extend your knowledge and extend your kind of usage repetitions with using Streamlet and Bedrock and Snowflake. So let's go ahead and start getting our AWS environment set up, right? So the 2 key things about AWS we're going to want to worry about is making sure that we have access to some of these AWS models. And the way that the lab is set up is that we're using Titan, Jurassic, and Claude models. So if I come here to my AWS account, I click on Bedrock there. Let's open up this menu in the top left hamburger menu. And we come down here and we can look at model access in the bottom left. And you can see all the models that you have access to. Hopefully you have access to Claude 3, you have access to the Titan models, and you have access to the Jurassic models. If you don't, for any model that you don't have access to, you can always request it by clicking here and requesting access to that model. Typically, depending on your organization, you can get access to that pretty quickly. But again, just making sure that you have access to some of the Anthropic models, the Jurassic models, and the Titan models. And then for the sake of the integration, right, we're going to be using something called Snowpark external access to make these external calls to Bedrock. And the way that we're going to be doing that here is using keys, right? So from my sandbox account here at Snowflake, I have the ability to generate these temporary keys, and this is what I'm going to be using. So a key ID, an access key, and a token. I know that I think some users of AWS will probably have to go the route of going through the IAM console here finding your user, right? I'll just kind of click on one. And then you have the ability to, from here, to actually generate those keys, right? So if I come here, you can see you have to go to select IAM service, find your user, and then click create access key, right? From your user profile, you can create an access key, and you can do that right here. So go ahead and generate that. One thing worth noting is that, we understand that even though we're doing this for this lab, that there's a lot of users who would prefer to use maybe an IAM role and pass their IAM role to the Snowpark external access object. And I'll show what that looks like. So the good news is that you can use this key method, which some folks are okay with using, but we know that many joint customers of Snowflake and AWS are not okay using. But if you're one of those customers, in the coming months, Snowflake has it on our roadmap to be able to support. You can pass an IAM role and then set up that trust relationship between Snowflake and the Bedrock service. That IAM role, which would be stored in Snowflake, will grant you access and allow you to kind of control access at the AWS plane, which we understand is a preferred security integration point that a lot of our customers have. So again, we're going to be using keys and tokens here, but in the coming months, you will be able to not only use keys and tokens, but also use an IAM role in the Snowpark external access integration point. Okay, so once we have that, the key and the ID and the token set up, you will then have access to the Bedrock models. Let's move on to step 4 here, and let's get our Snowflake environment set up. So what you're going to do is you're going to simply copy and paste this Snowflake code into a snow site, near Snowflake snow site, and run all this to get some tables set up, right? So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating a virtual warehouse called HOL_warehouse or _WH, a database called customer wrap. Let's run that really quick. And then what we're going to be doing is creating a stage to an S3 bucket. And from that bucket, we're going to access several CSV files and then create tables out of them. The first one is going to be called customer wrap, which has, some customer IDs, products purchased, and then a sample recommendation, which can be used for one of the optional steps later in the lab. We also have customer demographics, and I'll just kind of run this quickly so we're not waiting. You can highlight and run this whole worksheet as I'm talking. I'm also going to create a products table as well as a products category table, which maps product IDs to specific categories, kind of like a roll-up hierarchical thing. And then we also have customer purchases, which maps customer IDs to product IDs, so you can look at the historical purchases that customers have made and will be used with the Streamlet app. Okay, once that's all run, you'll have this customer purchases table, which is customer ID and product ID, showing all the historical purchases. You can see here, we can kind of even look at, product category, right? We talked about that. That's the product category is the table that maps product IDs to product categories. So here I can kind of run that really quick. You can see product IDs. The product ID 12 is a lifestyle and leisure category. 16 again, a lifestyle and leisure. You can kind of scroll down, or maybe get some home improvement categories here in the top 10 too. And then looking here, we have the actual products that are purchased, so mapping product IDs to specific items that were purchased. So electric drill, IKEA bookshelf, a Schwinn bicycle. And then you have some customer demographic information that can also be leveraged. We know where the customer lives, age, years as customer, the purchases they made in 2023, so on and so forth. Okay, now that we have that, the tables loaded, let's go back to the actual quick start, and then let's set up that external access. And this is the key thing that I was talking about earlier. This is how we're allowing Snowflake the ability to externally call Amazon Bedrock, right? So what we'll do here is we'll just go ahead and copy and paste all of this, and then let's go into a different sheet, and we can just paste it right here inside of Snowflake, right? And there's a handful of things that we're going to have to change here, and that is the AWS access key ID, the access key itself, and then that big token that we'll have to input here. And then we'll have to change this value list. So let's start it up here at the top and get this access ID populated. So I'm going to refresh my browser window here to make sure I have access to the right temporary key. And then what I'm going to do is kind of just go through one by one and paste these into Snowflake. So starting with the AWS access key ID, I'll paste that here. I'll go to the secret access key and then paste that. Here's the password argument. And then the last thing will be this password here for the session key, which is the AWS session token, which is pretty big. So you can see here, what we're doing is we're creating this object inside of Snowflake called AWS keys, which houses the username and password, which is just the key and the ID. And then we're creating a session key, which houses the token, right? So we can go ahead and let's run that and get those objects created. And then the other thing we'll have to do is we're going to set up this network rule, right? This is a relatively new object inside of Snowflake, which says, hey, let Snowflake make external calls out to this URL, right? So what you need to do is kind of input your AWS region here, right? So the way that we set up here, if you're in US West 2, it'll be pretty easy. You can just kind of do what I'm doing here. Else, what you need to do is just in between, Bedrock -runtime, you'll have to put in whatever region you're in, and basically say, hey, allow Snowflake to make those external calls. So now we have that network rule. So now we've given permission. Worth noting that when you store these keys, right? And I understand I'm sharing these on a lab. These are obviously going to be recycled. And you will be able to use them by the time we go live. But these keys are all encrypted, right? So when you store these inside of Snowflake, everything is encrypted. There's that security level there, so you can kind of quickly remove these from a worksheet so that nobody can access them, and they're securely stored inside of Snowflake. So let's move on and kind of continue setting up the integration. So now with the network rule that we created, right, and with the session key and AWS keys, what we're now going to do is set up this really new and powerful tool that we have inside of Snowflake called Snowpark External Access. We're going to set up the integration that says, hey, we're going to create this integration that utilizes this rule that's saying, hey, we can go ahead and make those external calls. And the way that we're going to be making those external calls are with these two objects that we just created that house the key and the ID and the token. And then with that integration, what we're going to do is create this ask Bedrock function, right? Which is, and I'm not going to go through all the details here, how you kind of set this function up, and you can take some time to kind of parse through it, understand what we're doing. But really what we're doing is we're saying, hey, we're going to accept several arguments, some instructions from the LLM, some context from the user, which is going to be Snowflake data, and then a Bedrock model, right? And we're saying right now, hey, we're going to accept this Jurassic model, we're going to accept this Titan model, and we're going to accept the Claude model. Important to note that as we're recording this, we think we've done a good job of highlighting the best of breed models that are inside of Bedrock. But this recording is going to live on forever. So you may want to kind of, we'll do our best to update the quick start to make sure that we're including the best of breed models over time. But you may want to, eventually update these models as, Bedrock matures and we're moving on to Claude 4, 5, 6, 7, what have you. But right now, Claude 3 is the best of breed as far as Anthropic models. We're going to be kind of toying around with that. Then what we can do once we've created this function, and I'm not going to go into all the different details as far as the classes and sub-functions that we're creating here, but what we can do is just set some default instructions, right? And then set a default model name. And then just go ahead and test out this function that we just created called ask_bedrock with that big block of code above, and make sure it works, right? And saying, hey, if we say, here are the instructions, which is write a personalized email. We're going to say, just give it this kind of subsamples of context, and then use that model that we defined. Hopefully this works. And if it doesn't, we'll have to do a little bit of debugging. And what should be generating here, right, with this simple select ask Bedrock function is just be outputting a simple record here that has that message that we're asking for. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it looks like it did, right? And the model did exactly what we expected it to do. If I kind of blow this up, you can see it's able to, the Claude model does a really good job of saying, hey, you purchased lighting and furniture and home decor, and we're going to recommend, making, all of these other recommendations that, you can purchase from our store this year, right? So we're in good shape. Now, once you kind of cross this chasm, you have the function working, you're able to externally make that call to Bedrock and get some a response back. We're in really good shape to finish this lab out. So let's go back over to the quick start page, and we'll move on to finally building out this Streamlet app, right? So what we're going to do, and you can start doing this now, is on the left side of your Snowflake account, go ahead and find where Streamlet lives. And we're going to create a new Streamlet app, and make sure that you're running it as account admin inside of that same customer wraps database that we just created, right? So I come here to Streamlet app. I'm going to say top right here, create Streamlet. You can see I'm running as account admin. And I'll just, I think in the quick start, we say, name it something like, quick start Gen AI customers wraps. You can go ahead and name that. I'll just kind of be quick here. Customers wrapped. We're going to use that database, and this is important, right? We use that database customer_wrapped. That's where all of the tables live that we just created inside of Snowflake. And then we're going to use the warehouse that we created, HOL_WH, which is I think it's an extra small warehouse. You don't need anything bigger than that. And then go ahead and click create. Important to note that we're saying app will run with rights of account admin. Obviously, in the real world, you're going to have a more sophisticated RBAC strategy, but for the sake of the lab, running it as account admin or whatever role you have that gives you the most privileges is going to just ensure that we have access to those tables that we just created. And if you do kind of get some errors running the Streamlet app in terms of like unable to access, a lot of times it's because the role that you created the app under doesn't have the access to those tables. So you can either recreate a Streamlet app with a higher level role like account admin, or go to those tables and give them access to whatever role that give access to whatever role you're running the Streamlet app as to those tables. But for now, just go ahead and click create. And while that's creating, actually, I'm going to go back and show you one thing because it is important to highlight, right? The fact that, this external access integration, this is where we're providing the authentication secrets. This is where in the coming months, we're going to change this behavior so that you're going to be able to accept an IAM role. So you wouldn't have to provide secrets and tokens here. So just remember that, like put that in the back of your head. If you're saying, hey, I can't use tokens and keys, know that come summertime, the IAM role will be supported here. Okay. So back here, we created a Streamlet app. If you've done this successfully, you're going to have this simple kind of template demo dummy app that we don't need, right? So let's go ahead and on the left side, highlight all the code here that was kind of pre-populated for you, and just get rid of that. And then come back to the quick start and copy all of the code that we have here. And then paste that into your Streamlet app on the edit page. And this is really simple, right? We're just creating a few Streamlet widgets. If you click run on the right side, it'll regenerate your Streamlet app. And what we're just saying is, okay, from Snowflake now, you have this really cool ability to adjust your prompt, right? To say, hey, what kind of prompt do you want to use to generate a message from Bedrock? You can go ahead and select whatever model you want to use. Let's go ahead and select Claude 3 since it does such a great job. And right now, for like this base level app that we're creating for this quick start, we're actually not gonna pull data directly from Snowflake, and I'll show you how to do that later. But we're going to say, hey, you can just kind of go ahead and define different product categories, customer name, and store name. And right, so you remember we created this function that accepts 3 separate arguments, right? That accepts 3 separate arguments. So it accepts instructions, it accepts the model type, and it accepts the context. And that's what we're providing here. So if you go ahead and click the Ask Bedrock button, what that's now doing is it's making that call. And while it's running, and you can see it's kind of running up here on the top right, what it's doing is it's simply doing that select Ask Bedrock, right? This is embedded in our Streamlet code, right? Just the same as when we were testing it out on that sheet. And now we're displaying the results of that. And now we get to see, all of the message that was generated using Bedrock and Claude 2, right? And the cool thing about this is that the lab is done, right? We have what is this, 30 minutes or so, have connected Snowflake to Bedrock. We've created a function that allows you to use that secure connection, and then built an app on top of that that can allow users to utilize that connectivity from Snowflake to Bedrock really quick. But for those who want to kind of keep working on this and have an appetite to kind of keep working on it, there's 3 additional steps here that you can take that are optional. And I'm not going to go through them in great detail here. I'll walk you through them, but feel free to go through it on your own. Is number 1, you can start testing out the different prompt engineering strategy, right? We include this link to this great GitHub that is a guide to prompting, right? So feel free to use this as a nice reference of, how to test out and enhance the responses that you're getting using different strategies like, providing a few shots to be able to give the LLM an example of what you want as far as an output based on an input. You can also, there's kind of some kitschy things in here. I think prompt number 6 here says that you offered the LLM some money. Oh yeah, I'm going to tip you X amount of dollars for a better solution. So have some fun with it, right? As well as kind of understanding, the best ways to get better responses from your LLM model. So that's optional step 1. Optional step 2 is to say, okay, hey, this is a nice app, but it's not really using any Snowflake data, right? But what you do want to do, if you like to, you can go ahead and copy this code from step 9 and then paste that in. And what we're saying here is like, hey, what you're going to do is you're actually going to access that customer purchases data, or you're going to access the products data, right? Sitting inside of Snowflake. And then we're saying, on your own, go ahead and add some code here to, join together some tables and do some aggregations in order to get this to work. And now what you're doing is you're actually using that as context, right? You're actually using the Snowflake data sitting inside of your Snowflake database as context to be provided to your Bedrock model. So that's optional step number 2. We encourage you all to try that. Lastly, the last optional step, and this is really cool. This is kind of like taking advantage of another great integration we have with AWS, is we have an integration with SageMaker Canvas, right? And via SageMaker Canvas, you can quickly train or fine-tune foundational models inside of Bedrock, right? So now Canvas sort of becomes the linchpin here. You can go ahead and bring in, connect to your Snowflake data, bring in some of that data that we have where we showed off, like an ideal response. So we have it's all one of the tables that we loaded here. You can kind of bring it in and you create a data set with the side of Canvas, and then you have the ability to fine tune the model. And then, so yeah, it's this customer type and recommendation becomes your output column that you're going to use as your effectively your target field to fine tune a model inside of Bedrock from Canvas. So certainly encourage you all to kind of follow the steps there. This does take some time, right? Training a model, and I said quickly, the steps of setting it up are quick, but it will take likely several hours to get the model trained. And then you can, deploy that via provision throughput and then access that model from Streamlet just the same as we did here. So that's it, right? So to conclude, right, what we learned, I think the important takeaway is both how easy it is and how easy it is to have a secure connection, is that we learned how to set up Snowflake and AWS environments to integrate the 2 platforms. We built this Snowpark external access integration to call Amazon Bedrock. And then we also built the Streamlet app that allows you to interact with Amazon Bedrock and generate these retail messages. We have several related resources here, kind of basically how to harden this lab and make it more of a enterprise scale setup and workload. That said, we talked about the fact that this lab is really quick, right? We ripped through steps 1 through 6 pretty quickly. If you do have an interest in having, something on site or something, with your individual customer, if you're already a customer of Snowflake and AWS, or if you're pretty far along in the journey of evaluating AWS and Snowflake, please reach out to your account team. We're happy to try to figure out a way that we can help enable. This is like a great afternoon session where we can either do it in person or virtually, and get you guys ripping through kind of, some of these steps 7, 8, and 9. So you can kind of really better understand like, oh, this is what this is going to look like, in the real world. And this is like the power of this integration. And I think that's, I'll end with that, right? The integrations that Snowflake has with AWS allows for so many different possibilities to be able to use your Snowflake data with generative AI in Amazon Bedrock. Thank you.